Coming up today, South Korea's main rival parties failed to make much progress during talks on redrawing the nation's electoral map. They also failed to see eye to eye on an anti-terror bill. President Park Geunhye urges her top aides to ensure national security and the safety of the people in the face of the growing threats posed by North Korea. Plus, the US and Russia have announced that a cessation of hostilities in Syria should go into effect in 5 days' time, but the two main jihadist groups are not part of the truce agreement. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, February 23rd here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning: South Korea's rival political parties have once again failed to reach a compromise over how to redraw the nation's electoral map ahead of the general election that is set for mid-April. Chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sang, and his main opposition party counterpart, Kim Jong-in, held talks for more than 5 hours until early Tuesday morning, but failed to reach common ground on the redistricting or on pending anti-terrorism bill. On that bill, the ruling party is pushing for a revision that would give the National Intelligence Service power to collect private information. The main opposition party is deeply opposed to that. It says that right should go to the Ministry of Public Safety and Security, as the NIS is protected from being investigated for any illegal acts. The two sides will meet again on this Tuesday morning for additional negotiations on these and other pending bills. President Park Geunhye has reiterated her call for stronger measures against worsening external economic conditions. Chairing a meeting with her senior secretaries on Monday, the president also urged her top aides to work harder to ensure the nation's security and safety. Song Ji-sun with the details.
Noting the rising terror threats from North Korea, President Park Geunhye called on her senior secretaries to do their best for the nation's security and to guarantee the safety of the people.
현재의 엄중한 상황 하에서 국가 안보를 최우선으로 하면서 국민이 안심하고 생업에 종사할 수 있도록 비상한 각오로 업무에 만전을 기해 주기를 바랍니다.
Regarding last month's exports, which dropped by the fastest pace in 6 years, Park said external economic conditions are worse than expected, citing the slowdown in China and in other emerging economies. Saying that the recent fluctuations in global financial markets, coupled with the North Korean factor, could weigh on the South Korean economy, she stressed that reform drives must be continued to revitalize the economy.
지금은 당초 예상했던 것보다 훨씬 대외 경제 여건이 어려워진 상황입니다. 중국 경제 침체가 계속되고 있고 신흥국과 자원 부국들의 경제 불안이 커지고 있으며 세계 증시도 크게 흔들리고 있습니다. 가뜩이나 어려운 상황에 북한 핵실험과 미사일 도발로 고조된 한반도 긴장이 경제에 더 큰 부담으로 작용할 수 있습니다. 이럴 때일수록 우리 경제의 활력 제고와 구조개혁 성과 가시화를 더욱 적극적으로 추진해야 할 것입니다.
Following up on last week's investment promotion meeting, she reiterated that aside from regulations that are absolutely necessary, all should be lifted to ensure they do not hamper new growth engines. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea and the United States have stressed that talks on North Korea's denuclearization must come before dialogue. The united stance came after an American news outlet reported that Washington agreed to Pyongyang's proposal for talks to formally end the Korean War, without the North having to take steps to curtail its nuclear arsenal. Connie Kim reports.
South Korea has sent a clear message that it should be at the center of establishing a peace treaty with North Korea. This is in response to a report that the U.S. secretly agreed to hold talks with the North on formally ending the Korean War. According to the story published Sunday by the Wall Street Journal, Washington had dropped its preconditions that Pyongyang must take steps to denuclearize in order to hold talks, instead calling for its nuclear weapons program to be part of the discussion.
The peace treaty is not an issue between the US and North Korea. South Korea should be leading discussions on this issue.
Pyongyang has long been seeking a peace treaty with Washington and to stop South Korea-US joint military drills, which it views as a threat to the regime. U.S. State Department spokesman John Kirby clarified it was North Korea that first proposed peace talks and that Washington's response was in line with goals to denuclearize the North, which Pyongyang rejected. A South Korean government official also added that punishing Pyongyang for its nuclear test and long-range ballistic missile test is of utmost priority for Seoul and Washington. This is why some officials say it's taking the UN Security Council so long to come up with its strongest sanctions yet on North Korea for its latest provocations. Seoul says they're in the final stages of drafting the resolution, which could be announced as early as this week. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea and the United States are scheduled to hold joint military drills in the United States this week. They are designed to enhance combined deterrence capabilities against North Korea's nuclear threats. Our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Yeon-bin reports.
South Korea's Defense Ministry announced that the Allies' annual tabletop exercise, led by the Deterrence Strategy Committee, are set to start Wednesday at the Vandenberg Air Force Base in the U.S.
The extended deterrence exercise will focus on North Korea's nuclear and missile threats and evaluate political and military risks they may pose, as well as ways to better counter them.
The ministry explained on Monday that actual combat scenarios will be carried out over the course of 3 days. Some 40 defense and foreign affairs officials from both countries are also slated to take part in the discussion-based exercise. Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy, Ryu Jae-sung, is heading the South Korean side. The U.S. will be co-led by Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear and Missile Defense Policy, Elaine Bunn, and Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia, Abraham Denmark. The two allies are also scheduled to conduct on-site inspections of U.S. extended deterrence military assets. This year's exercise will be the fifth of its kind since the Extended Deterrence Policy Committee was established in 2011. Kim Yeon-bin, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's finance minister met with international media on Monday to discuss the state of the South Korean economy and the government's future policy direction. Kim Min-ji with the details.
South Korea's finance minister says North Korean issues will have a limited impact on the country's economy. Speaking at a press conference with foreign correspondents to Seoul on Monday, Minister Yoo Il-ho said that the government is closely monitoring the situation to minimize any possible effects. Regarding the possible deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD, Yoo said the move will not impact South Korea's economic cooperation with China, its biggest trading partner. Beijing has been opposed to the move, calling on Seoul and Washington to withdraw the deployment plan. The minister stressed that the issue is a political one and thus will not have a big impact on the economic front. Noting uncertainties at home and abroad, Yoo said the country will make all-out efforts to adopt effective market-friendly policies. The minister, however, cited Korea's strong economic fundamentals, highlighting how it achieved firm growth in relative terms compared to other countries and possesses the capability to counter external risks thanks to ample foreign reserves and current account surplus. Yoo said the government will maintain expansionary financial policies while continuing to focus on boosting investment, creating new jobs, and implementing new strategies to expand exports in current economic conditions. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, President Park Geunhye will mark the start of her fourth year in office on Thursday. To mark the occasion, we are broadcasting a series of reports about her successes and failures over the last 12 months and a look at what might be in store going forward. Second up is the President's handling of diplomatic matters. Kwon So-ah has the details.
Some 30 overseas trips in 3 years, more than any other South Korean president in history. efforts to bolster Korea's relations with its foreign partners, building international consensus on reunification of the two Koreas, and cooperation on denuclearizing the North have been key goals on the Park administration's diplomatic front. The terms summit diplomacy, sales diplomacy, and unification diplomacy have been omnipresent during President Park's 3 years in office. This concentration on diplomatic performance reinforced relationships with the U.S., assessed as being at an all-time high, as well as with China, particularly on business matters, with the effectuation of the Seoul-Beijing Free Trade Agreement.
She seems to have a pretty good relationship with Barack Obama. But other than that, I would have to just say that the relationship with China is the biggest one, which is appropriate because China is becoming more and more important to the South Korean economy and South Korean politics in general. China is often pointed to as the country that has the most influence over North Korea.
But in the wake of North Korea's recent nuclear and long-range missile tests, some experts say President Park Geunhye's shift to a more hardline policy based on sanctions against Pyongyang indicates that Seoul may be turning its back on Beijing.
I think now she's moving towards some different trajectory of her policies so that the resultant objective of her policy would be more pragmatic rather than something based upon a trust or some higher expectations on other neighboring superpowers. Some recommendations I have is why don't we have South Korea, North Korea, US trilateral dialogue?
While North Korea remains under the international spotlight, follow-up measures to the so-called comfort women issue, including Japan's denying of the existence of records on the military's forced recruitment of wartime sex slaves, and ongoing talks between Seoul and Beijing on a maritime demarcation line, are other challenges that must be addressed during the remainder of President Park Geunhye's term in office. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The United States and Russia have agreed a ceasefire in Syria that would take effect on Saturday in an attempt to end 5 years of bloodshed in that country. The countries say the cessation of hostilities, as they call it, would begin on February 27th, but would exclude the Islamic State and al-Nusra militants. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that if implemented and adhered to, the deal will lead to a decline in violence and allow the delivery of humanitarian supplies to besieged areas. The announcement follows telephone talks between Presidents Obama and Putin. The development has been welcomed by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who called it a first step towards a more durable ceasefire. Now, virtual reality devices and 5G networks have been taking centre stage at the biggest mobile tech show of the year, the Mobile World Congress, which kicked off in Barcelona officially on Monday. Our Kim Ji-yeon is there, and she filed this report.
Mobile is everything. This is the theme for this year's Mobile World Congress. It conveys that innovation in the mobile sector is reaching into our daily lives, and that there are very few things being created today that don't somehow have a mobile component to them, and this includes the virtual reality sector.
This year's MWC has put the spotlight on VR devices, so it's no surprise the world's largest smartphone maker, Samsung Electronics, has its own VR experience corner.
At Samsung's 4D Experience Center, visitors wait in a long line so they can take a virtual ride on a snow vehicle or roller coaster. Users put on their Gear VR headsets, which generate 360-degree images with every move and turn that's made. The Korean tech giant is eyeing the VR sector for growth, teaming up with Facebook for its VR contents. Still, the VR sector remains in its infant stage and needs more user-friendly VR devices and faster connectivity to produce higher resolutions. For that, companies like Korea-based SK Telecom have introduced a 5th-generation 5G network, an improved version from the current 4th-generation LTE network.
So more than 100 times rather than 4G network. So it should be. So for example, so if you download the HD movie files, if you use the LTE network, Yeah, so you can spend so around 60 seconds or so, around 1 minute. But if you use the 5G network, so within 1 second, you can download it.
Another company that's providing 5G connectivity is US-based Qualcomm. They say their annual trip to Barcelona is a great business opportunity.
So we actually speak to operators and vendors from around the world throughout the year. But Mobile World Congress gives us a really great opportunity where we can have influential members from all these communities all in one place. It makes it easy for us to display all the great things we're working on all in one place, rather than have them travel around the world at different times.
SK Telecom and its local rival KT Corporation led discussions at the MWC to formulate a global standard platform for the fifth-generation network ahead of the 2018 Winter Olympics that will be hosted by South Korea's alpine town of Pyeongchang. The companies plan to provide full 5G services at sporting venues during the Games. Kim Jeon, Arirang News, Barcelona.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Until then, goodbye.